I can understand there being some misogynoir in this. And
I'll
I
venture.
wanted to check. I said, I can see. Let me take a sit back. Let me check and see, because I'm like, I don't think this is what this is, but I'm not gonna say it without no confirmation. And both of y'all, T didn't even respond with no mention other than a whole post from Raw. Because it was like, this is why. And I said, oh, okay. So
I got tons of soul, I'm a true collectible. Famous, also famous, number one desirable. I do what I want, when I want, and how I want it. Leave you with the one in the air, that's how I roll. So royal, this is me, I'm so royal.
welcome to another episode of In the Middle. I know it's been 10 years since we've been back. We are in a conversation talking about Patrice. This is going to be a Dear Patrice style video with my faves. And we got a lot of things to talk about. Y'all have reached out and we are in the conversation. We've been in the group chats. Deshaun has been flued out talking about all these things. like you were in charge of you were like one of the folks that have been reached out to discuss the problems with the mothers that were having these issues with the whole situation, not just Patrice, but just as a collective, like all of these people making money off of this movement. And it's just like, what are y'all doing? What is this for?
Right. Yeah, I myself and like a couple of my friends like have been organizing with the mothers and a few other folks um, in response to like Patrice Cullors um, and Tamika Mallory and Sean King and all these folks, Ben Crump and Lee Merritt, who have in so many ways built careers off of the back of black kids and black people being murdered by police. Um, whether they've had a direct interaction with the particular mothers that were involved or not, right? And so it's interesting watching all that's happening with Patrice right now. It's actually really very frustrating to watch what's happening because she has done, this PR 101 type of thing where she has like gotten, all these celebrity activists, celebrity scholars, celebrity academics, like to be able to stand on her side and claim that she's being attacked by white supremacists, right? So that she can evade any type of like principal critique that has been offered to her by a bunch of like black people directly impacted by the death of black people by police or by black organizers who have been doing like work in the streets, many of whom have been doing that work under the name of BLM.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's like it has been interesting for me because she Patrice has a history, right? Like there have been people who have documented the history that she has within movement space of being abusive and lacking accountability, right? And sort of like dodging any sort of accountability that could come from being called in. And they weaponize identity in so many ways, right? Where it's like, this black queer woman is leading a movement, and so we should be kinder to her. And black women deserve nice things, and black women, we should be kinder to them and defend them and all these things, right? The reality is that all of us are under attack by white supremacy. We're all niggas first and foremost, right? Like,
Period.
so so you being attacked by white supremacy is not new, nor is it unique to you. Let's start with that. I don't want you to be doxxed, right? Like, yeah, I think that there is an issue with the fact that your home's like the actual address and whatnot has been put online for everyone to see, and that puts you and your family in grave danger. Heard you. You also didn't have to buy $4 million properties, right? Like that was a choice that you decided to make. And because we don't know where you get your money from, right? Because we don't know how you get money. All we know is that after BLM has raised 90 million dollars in 1 year, you now bought four different $1 million properties. And your excuse is that you did so because you take care of your child and your mom and your brother. That's 3 people plus yourself is 4, right? So you have a family of 4 that you're taking care of. Like so many people in America, Black people in America, who are taking care of more people, right? Like, and yet none of us have access to millions of dollars to just spend that on 4 different properties. And you also don't have to spend that on 4 different properties, especially because not every property that you bought was in the US. Yeah. So it's like, at which point do you sit and think, right? Like, you're a trained Marxist. That's your professed ideology, right? So I want to know how she defines Marxism. I want to know how she understands Marxist like practice to work. And I want to know why she feels justified in like having her celebrity friends jump on board with defending her and her actions, where people have for years been asking for accountability from the very people that have been able to get access to resources and finances off of the labor that the rest of us have put in over the years, right? Many of us didn't even ascribe to BLM as organizers. Myself, T, the folks we organized with, we never organized under Black Lives Matter, ever. And yet, and still, so much of the work that we did was attributed to BLM. And so it's like, if that's the case, then not only are BLM chapters around the country owed, but the work of Black organizers in general is deserving, and we are owed back pay for the money you were able to obtain off of the work that we did. But even beyond that, it's like the deeper conversation and the more important conversation, I think, is that these people have built and are building entire careers that require for Black people to continue to be subjugated, right? That require that Black folks are continue to be engaged as subjects, as objects, as things worthy of being beaten, worthy of being murdered, worthy of being lifeless, right? So that they can keep being paid, so that they can keep being backed by Wells Fargo and Doritos, DeRay.
Cadillac.
So that they can be backed by Cadillac, right, Tamika? So that they can be, sponsored by all these orgs and companies that in so many ways have a hand in mass incarceration, that have a hand in the upkeep of the prison industry, right? That have a hand in the discrimination against and the oppression of Black folks who are poor in the US, right? And around the globe, right?
I mean, the death of entire cities, right?
Literally.
The whole 30 years of Black folks with no jobs. And
literally.
Because, capitalism.
Right. And so it's like, at which point do you honor the fact that you play a role in the violence that is anti-Blackness, right? And we can talk about how all of us in so many ways contribute to anti-Blackness and that we have to always move through anti-Blackness because it's something that controls the world, right? We get that. And we don't all have access to millions of dollars, millions on top of millions of dollars off of the labor of other Black people who have been exploited and who you aid in the exploitation of, so that you can, quote unquote, take care of your family of 4. It don't work that way.
Especially when we got folks not only taking care of our family, but folks that we don't even know if we never met.
Right.
That'd be my thing. Like, there's people I've never met that I've given money to outside of my direct family and friends, and I don't have access to no $1 million. And even when I was, speaking with you all a couple of weeks about, purchasing a home, y'all in my community, I'm talking to you all like, hey girl, like, how do I maneuver this? How do I do these things? And I can imagine talking to you all and saying, hey, I'm about to buy $4 million homes. One in the home I probably won't only be in probably like 2 months out of the year. Y'all probably would have hung up the damn phone, as you all should.
Precisely. And I think that right there is the thing. So if we're just going to unpack the house and this week's controversy, right? It goes all the way back to the thing that these people have created an entire industry online about called accountability. And we know in accountability work, like the very fundamental twofer on it is it requires consent and it requires community. And so the 3 of us are deeply in community together. And so in that analogy, Justin, 1, you would call us, and 2, Deshaun and I's political alignment as leftists or left of leftists, right? You know, as we know we are to be, as fellow marginalized folks, right? We're trans, we're Black, we're niggas from the South, all of the things, we check a lot of boxes.
Right.
You would sit there in our community and be like, on the political front and on the community front, this is sus. This is a violation. But I think what's fundamentally like the issue here with Patrisse and her community is that they think this is a thing to celebrate. So when you look at the people who came out and were defending her, it was one of two things or two things at once. One, she's done so much work as the face, as birthing this movement, as giving us this work, that she is owed nice things. Belle's here.
Hey, Belle.
Right. That's one thing. And then two, because she's a Black woman and a person of certain margins, you know, the world says she's not supposed to have anything anyway. So how dare we take that spoon out of her mouth, which we know that's literally not how that works. Like, you can bring your fam in and make them rethink the thing that they're about to do without also preventing them from being quote unquote well, which we know wellness is very much inaccessible to the Black. Thank you, Deshaun Harrison, you know, for that line of thinking. But I said all that to say, it's like, when you are in community with folks and folks are principled and not just parroting, you know, Marxism or some other type of political thought for clicks, giggles, and alignment, or, you know, line items on a grant, right? You know, then you know how to hold people accountable both to the political orientation, but also how we move as a community. And then I also think what's at issue here is that, like, you know, I mean, it's toxic neoliberalism at its best, right? Like, we want so bad, we desire so badly, because of the way anti-Blackness works, to have exceptional beings at the face and the forefront of our movement. I mean, people who claim to have some sort of political orientation threw that shit right out the window when it was time to go vote for Kamala Harris and go check a box for Stacey Abrams, you know, with no, you know, recollection of even how they had prior dragged the Democratic Party, how they might have been a Bernie bro at the very least, all, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But because we have this exceptional person of a certain identity out front, we're supposed to put our criticisms to the side so that we can have this figure at the forefront of even more genocide and murder and Black death. Right. And I think, you know, in my last point on this, Deshaun bringing up the requirement for the Black flesh currency in the movement point to be Black death in this very, very real way, not just police violence. But I know as a public policy person and an urban planner that, like, policy and planning fixes, don't actually fix the problem. Right. Because if we actually wrote and enacted the policy and design measure that would eradicate the issue, what would our job actually be? What would we get grants for? And so what was really striking to me was in the interview with Mark Lamont Hill, where she says, one, I haven't taken a salary from BLM Global Network, and two, you know, we are holding ourselves accountable to these chapters and to these organizers by being a grant-making institution. Well, you just zapped the revolution out of the work with that statement in itself, because now you have become a part of the problem. The reason that we need alternative funding streams, alternative funding mechanisms, you know, something outside of the traditional nonprofit industrial complex, perfect victim, therefore you get the grant dollars type of pipeline to getting shit done and getting work moving, is precisely because of the way desirability and movement works. Because certain orgs with certain access is not about what you know, it's about who you know. All of the same issues that make her the ideal forefront of a movement that, I mean, in my opinion, I really think nail in the coffin, what we call the revolutionary movement, is very much dead. At this point, it is who can get their 501c3 and who can become a grant-making institution or some sort of other fiduciary agent, and who can look the best doing it or the most ideal doing it. Right. And so it's like, you didn't solve anything in any way that you tried to hold yourself accountable, nor did you tap in your friends to write really surface sort of Instagram posts and IG lives about who you are. Like, I love y'all to death, but if y'all do fucked up shit, I'm not gonna go on my socials and be like, Deshaun Harrison is one of my oldest friends and I love them, and here's 10 pictures of us in the streets from 6 years ago, and like pre-order their book. But Deshaun Harrison just committed very real violence.
Right.
And so I'm just gonna throw that out the way. And for what? It's really sick.
Yeah, I think what I've been seeing is, especially when you were talking about these companies using BLM, is almost like the Energy Star product. Like,
Ciao.
Girl, we working with Black Lives Matter, so you know that we are good when it comes to the Negroes. So we just want to let you. We just gonna slap this on here. Look, we done with Black Lives Matter.
NAACP.
Yes, that and I'm seeing it, and when I'm watching the interactions and the conversations, and I'm looking at the comments, and it's just a lot of, unfortunately, blue check folks who are very well known, very established, and they just don't see the issue with it, and that's because they're doing the same thing.
Right.
They don't see no issue with making money off of this, and it reminds me of how it is when it comes to the work, when it comes into like ending the epidemic, when it comes to HIV. Are you in it to end it, or are you, that means that your job would no longer be needed once it's done? Or are you going to continue to make money off of this? Like, you need to be working towards completely eradicating it, not just moving it forward until you can retire and you can make money and pass it on to the next person. Like, that's not a part of it. I don't want to be a part of any movement where I'm making money off of this shit. So it's just like, what is the goal here? And
yeah.
I don't see it.
Yeah, and I think that so much about this is exactly that, right? Like, people keep trying to make the argument, well, what do you want? You want Black people to always be poor? And it's like, no. Of course we're against capitalism and the ways that it like makes our positions, Black people, disproportionately into poverty, right? Like, that's obviously not the argument. What is the argument though is that you're like, of course I got beef with Black women CEOs and big companies and like Black women billionaires too. And we can talk about that all day. But the bigger issue is that you are becoming this person who has accumulated wealth by way of a Black freedom movement, right? Like, you are not just Oprah out here, right? And we can talk about the beef that we got with Oprah. Y'all know I got beef with Oprah.
We know.
But you like, you're not just a Tyler Perry. You are somebody who built all of this wealth, who accumulated this wealth or this richness off the back of a lineage of freedom fighting, right? Off of a lineage of Black political struggle, a Black social struggle. And that has a very particular type of like connotation that's more violent in my opinion than just an Oprah or a Tyler Perry, because they don't have an allegiance to Black liberation or a professed allegiance to Black liberation in the same way that you do. We know that Tyler Perry and Oprah and Lee Daniels and all of these people, right, Ava DuVernay, all these people have a very particular like professed like love for Black people or whatever, and they make films and they talk about Black folks in a particular way, but they have not have a professed like political ideology like Marxism, like organizing, that positions them in alignment with, or that names that they are like in allegiance to Black freedom, right, and Black liberation struggle. That's very different. And so I think like what my frustration is with her is that she doesn't understand the contradiction, it seems, between being able to call yourself a trained Marxist, whatever the fuck that means, and an organizer, while also saying, I'm gonna post a video electric slide against white supremacy, and I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna go out and buy these properties because I gotta take care of my family. What are you saying? Like at what point, and this is, and I know we didn't make a video about this, but and this is a different conversation, so I won't go too deep into it, but this is how we get a Judas from Judas and the Black Messiah, right? Like, this is how we get William O'Neill, because there's no political allegiance right? You move with the wind. And so at any given moment, whatever works best for you is how you show up in a space that destroys an entire Black movement, right? And you get to say that everyone who calls you or who makes critiques of you is either a white supremacist or they are the Judas of the Black Messiah, right? They are the COINTELPRO. But that's exactly how it works. And I'm not suggesting or calling her COINTELPRO, but what I am saying is that you have a very specific look, and it is that of someone who is a William O'Neill, right? Someone who doesn't have a political alignment, someone who doesn't have allegiances to Black people, someone who is willing and committed to destroying Black movements so long as they get some sort of benefit from it. That's how it looks for her and the rest of them, her and Tamika and Sean and DeRay and all of them, right? And it's like, that has to be true. It has to be true because there's no other way for you to be able to make money, right? If Black people are not dying. Right. If Black people stop being murdered by police tomorrow, these people would have no job. They also would have no reason to organize.
Right.
That becomes the violent part, right? It's that you get to organize around the murders of Black people by police when Black people are being killed by every other institution in the world, right? Yep. First and foremost. And also all of us who are organizers, who are not career organizers,
come on,
would not just tomorrow lose our job and be able to still live comfortably if Black people stop dying in the streets, right, by police. And they don't understand how violent that is. Many of us who are even career organizers that are not like rich and whatnot, who work for these nonprofits, are not only organizing around police violence, quote unquote police violence.
Right.
So even if we were like an organizer for a nonprofit organization and police stopped killing us tomorrow, we still would have work to do because, again, Black people are dying across the world for varying reasons. So if your entire career is built off the back of us having to continue to be murdered by police so that you can get paid and that you can have money irrespective of what salary you may or may not take from your job, right? Because we know that capital is not just monetary, it's also social. And so you have access to Netflix deals and Warner's Brother deals and all these other deals because of who you are with BLM Global Network. So you don't have to have a salary because they pay you your salary. Because
wait, not to cut you off, did you, was any of us satisfied? Like, did she give us any answer where the money is coming from?
No, like the interview that she did nothing but stick the foot further down her throat. Yeah. And I think it's highly important to hone in on the fact that Deshaun brought up about the everyday organizer who is literally engaged in some sort of work, like your example in like HIV work, Justin, right? Because there's a double-edged sword there, right? On the one hand, we know that not everybody is invested in liberation, like right. Literal world-ending, state over, seize the means, get out to the utopia, whatever your call may be, whatever liberation looks like to you. Some people's liberation is being free to a better place in captivity, right? Mm. It's being free to gender. It's being free to the prison guard. It's being free to being the president of the United States. It's right. Being free to being the face and the head of a neoliberal capitalist movement. And that's okay for you, but it's not okay for me and everybody else who continues to die and who go under-resourced, especially like if you are a quote unquote trained Marxist or anybody with a really serious political grounding and critique of the present landscape that we live in, you know for a fact that like we are in a moment right now where life is more precious than it has ever arguably been before because of the way that the state has been gutted. And so in this example of the everyday things that Black folks are fighting, right? You know, whether it's your access to healthcare in the case of COVID or HIV, or you're talking about niggas are actually being evicted in a lot of these same cities that have either underfunded organizing bodies or where, you know, Patrisse is buying homes, right? You're contributing to that market. Somebody is being evicted because you are appreciating value from buying this home. Like, it just is what it is. Let's name what the things are. But I think about, in this moment, coming off of the pandemic and the summer uprising, there was this moment where mutual aid was actually holding true to its radical anarchist, radical, like Marinage-esque, like niggas who ain't never been served by the state serving themselves and serving each other sort of point of view, that very quickly got snatched up into this very same tunnel of grant-making nonprofit industrial complex moves. And this is all of the myths of scarcity and all the things that they sell you to say that there's this one big cookie and everybody gets a crumb, and the crumb is just enough to say that we're doing something, but what we're not doing is actually getting free. Right. And we watched it happen in real time. And I'm the organizer in the room of organizers that is like, when we draw out the big idea, I'm like, so at every point of this is where the state's going to come in, or this is where the capitalists are going to come in and cut our heads off or grab us by the throat. And it's like, whether you have a political alignment or not, because I'm also a trained neoliberal. I went to Georgia State University and was trained in the Andrew Young School of Policy Studies. Neoliberal on top of Negro liberalism, like right there 101. And so even if you go along with the regime and if you are in alignment with that way of going, you know how the shit works. So I'm just like, for somebody like Patrisse and everybody who's in alignment with her to really sit here and not pretend to not recognize the stakes of the moment that we're in, that literally Black folks put together whole systems of serving one another a year ago that have either gone to shit or are running off of one grant, and you want to be like, what's wrong with that? Like on the side of what's wrong with that, and just say, oh, I had no idea, or oh, I'm doing well, or call that doing well, call that serving the community. That's precisely why I say what we call a movement is actually a limit, is actually an impediment to the work that needs to get done. Because what happened last March was niggas was dying, there was no test, police said don't leave your house, and we went out at midnight in all Black and was dropping off supplies to our neighbors, right? Like, we was literally taking $1 from a GoFundMe and going to find the last 5 masks for the last 6 elders, right? Like, that's the type of work. And I think when you take a system like that and you force it to rely on movement infrastructure that is very much corrupt, you kill the movement before it gets started. Right. Or you stop it before it has a chance to actually evolve into something actually liberatory.
Didn't you say that Black Lives Matter was never a charity or something like that?
Did she say that?
Yes. In the interview with Mark Lamont Hill, she said, this isn't charity. We don't do charity. Girl, we're not asking for charity. If you're a Marxist, we're talking about you got accumulated, hoarded wealth, and we saying you need to redistribute it to folks doing the work. Right. To the people who are out in the middle of the night dropping off the masks. Right. Because you not doing that work. You're writing books and electric sliding. That's what you're doing. You're giving speeches. And your honorarium is enough to pay for a house for you and a house for your family. Your book contract is enough to pay for that.
I'm very confused that when people like they work for these, well, whatever's going on with the nonprofit and say that, well, I'm not making any money, I'm not getting paid from the nonprofit and all these things. I'm just like, let me tell you something. I know that there's some shady shit that goes on with nonprofits. There's even been documentaries, I can't even remember if it was the Salvation Army or the Red Cross, but both of them, how they don't disclose where this money goes, like sometimes, like because it's a trade secret or something, like something about, well, if we made $100 million last year, I only spent 10 million. I don't necessarily have to tell you where the other money went, or like that's none of your business. But it's just,
and a lot of it is founded by eugenicists and white supremacists and everything else in between. But hey, you know, somebody need a grant to keep the lights on, so we just sweep our politics under the table so that we can.
Even if she's not getting paid from this, she's getting paid from being the face of it. Like you said, Deshaun, like you're still making money off of this. You don't have to get paid by Black. The $90 million doesn't have to hit your account. But there's other things that you're doing where you're getting, oh, this is because when you get booked, you get booked as the co-founder of Black Lives Matter.
And the self-appointed executive director. So irrespective of whether or not you have a salary through Black Lives Matter Global Network, doesn't matter, because what matters is that you are still getting booked. Like you said, you're still getting paid for being the leader of Black Lives Matter Global Network. Period. Nothing about that changes just because you don't have a salary through BLM Global Network. And I don't believe that, but sure, sis. So it's still like, you know, like, and I don't have to believe it because you also refuse to be transparent about your funds, right? So we don't know shit because you refuse to tell us. You, Sean King, Tamika, all of them, right? Like, y'all refuse to show us exact. Like, if you really believe that you're not grifting, if you really believe that you are, you know, showing up for Black folks, show us. There's no transparency whatsoever. And we're just supposed to believe that because you're Black and you're a Black woman, you're a Black queer woman, you're a Black fat queer woman, that we just supposed to believe you. I don't believe you, sis. I don't know you. And from what I do know of you, you ain't showing me that you committed to the work that I'm committed to, right? You ain't showing me you committed to the same Black people that I'm committed to. And so if that's the case,
because your folks would have told you, girl, you don't need to be owning no goddamn $3-4 million.
Exactly.
Like, I can't imagine.
All the time. I tell people that all the time. I'm like, I don't have to worry about ever becoming a Patrisse Cullors or Tamika Mallory or a Sean King or DeRay McKesson, because I'm in community with niggas who give a fuck about Black people, right? Where I don't have to, where my principles, I know I stay grounded in my principles, right? But we also know that Black folks, especially those of us who come from nothing, it can be easy to abandon those politics when money is thrown in your face. I get that. But because I know I'm surrounded by people who are committed to the same principles that I'm committed to, who have a practice that I have, I know that I can never become that person, irrespective of what's thrown at me, because my niggas hold me accountable and I'm accountable to my niggas, like you said at the beginning of this. And so it's like, what does it say about you that every single person who's online defending you is celebrity or celebrity adjacent?
Wake it up.
What does it say about you that every single person who's claiming community to you is someone with the blue check, or someone who's the executive director of some organization, or someone who has access to resources that the common organizer does not, right? What does it say about you that Adrienne Marie Brown can release an article where she reduces every critique about you to white supremacy and gossip, and 24 Black organizers can read that and allow that to be the result of the takeaway of what's happening, right? What does it say about you that Mark Lamont Hill can interview you and not press you on your quote unquote trained Marxist politic, right? Where you get to say, I'm taking care of my family, and that be enough to be what comes out of the edited video. I'm sure it was edited, right? That of the interview.
Sure, it was questions that you couldn't ask.
Exactly. Right. What does it say about you that Sonya Renee Taylor, who we are supposed to understand to be, you know, at least a more left-leaning person, right, can hop on live or hop on Instagram and defend you by saying that basically that Black women deserve nice things, and that we can't critique you because we haven't critiqued Bill Gates and the other white millionaires and billionaires before you? What does it say about you that this is your community? What does it say about you that the people who are committed to defending you are the Negro liberals of the world, right? Who have, and maybe they aren't Negro liberals, maybe they also have a left-leaning political alignment. And that's more scary, because you've built community with people who have a left-leaning politic, but who are celebritized in a very particular way, and therefore are removed from the communities that you claim to represent. And so you now have to be the face of this outpour of people who are saying there's something wrong here, where when the people who are defending you, the people who are showing up for you, the people who you are claiming as community, are niggas who are not on the ground. And I don't mean on the ground as in, oh, I'm in the streets, blah blah blah. Like, I'm not, fuck all of that.
Not throwing cans of soup.
Say that shit. But what I mean by that is niggas who are amongst other poor Black working class people, right, who are doing work in a very particular way, or who don't have the time to be able to do the work that we do, right? those are not the ones who are defending you.
Mm-hmm.
Those are not the ones who are making photo dump as Instagram posts about you. They ain't the one that's writing blogs on their website about you, right? And it's like, at what point do you say, okay, I have to sit back and really think about what this means about my engagement with community. I have to think about how far removed then I am from community if this is what defense of me looks like. What does it look like that you have a BLM 10 chapters that broke away from BLM because of your as a co-founder of BLM Global Network, and more BLM chapters are breaking away from you as each day goes on? That means something significant, that the people who are organizing under your network's name are breaking away from your network because they don't trust you and because you have been abusive in varying ways. There's something very particular about that you have to sit with, and I don't give a fuck about what identity you check off, right, off of a box. It matters still that you are still exploiting and harming and abusing Black people and calling it liberatory. That matters. I don't care about your Black family that you take care of. I got a Black family too. I help support my mom too. I help support my family too, right? And I'm only making $40K a year. So like, I want to be clear about that too. I'm only making $40K a year. So, and I'm still and we all are still having to find ways to support our families too. So if that's the case, then you, as someone who's making significantly more than we are, have a responsibility, especially as someone who says they're committed to Black liberation. That matters.
I just like the transparency, like the receipts. Like, I just lay it out.
Just
I never get there. I'm just like, girl, here it is, right here. It's like,
right.
That's one of the things. And I've been told that I should do a nonprofit and all these other things. I was just like, girl, I don't know if I want to get into all of that, because I know, like, I've been told you can do things to write this off and move and pay yourself and all that. I'm just like,
capitalism.
Yes, like, I get told I would not lie. I've been told, like, well, you should do this, you should be taken. I said, that's not me. That's not something that I want to do. I can't, all I'm thinking about, like, it's not right. And I can't imagine sitting in a conversation with you all and you're like, girl, what? Like, we doing what now? Like, it's like your community. I just can't imagine having a community that's not going to hold me accountable for like things like that. I can't imagine sitting next to some friends and they're saying that it's okay for me to have a house in the Caribbean.
Right.
And it's not your only home.
Yes.
And I think about the way that the
vacation home teas.
Right. I think about the power of having a community of folks that are principled and that do call you in. So Deshaun and I were a part of the ATL is Ready group back in 2016, 2015, 2016, and ATL BSU and a bunch of other like youth organizing bodies. They came out of Atlanta in the post-Ferguson moment. Right. And a lot of us started in the 2013, 2014 moment, as we've told that story time and time again on how we kind of landed here. But there was something significant about 2017, because 2017 marked 3 years post-Ferguson, and 2 to 3 years post us really just unrelenting being in the streets across the country, but especially in Atlanta. And, me being the person that talks about Negro liberalism all the time and using Atlanta as my primary focus, right? This Black-led city with all of these Fortune 500 companies who fund the police, but also fund like a housing justice, like hotline or something. I don't know. That's not like an actual thing, but that's how it works. Like you have these corporations who grant make for people to actually have access to life-saving services while also sitting on the advisory board for like the Atlanta Police Foundation. But that's how most cities work, because that's how neoliberalism works, right? So we know that. But there was a moment where this shifting pattern across these big philanthropy groups, across these big corporations, government itself, because cities don't be having big like offices. They hire your nonprofit to simply do their work. Like I work for nonprofit urban planning firms. Well, that's what we do. We just take the city's contract and do their work. And they were throwing us a lot of money. They were hyping us up like, y'all gonna be the next thing. Like, we need to be resourcing y'all to do this work. But they wanted us to do the work in a way that kept us fed, that kept us doing, that kept us doing work that was very, surface. Y'all can organize some task force. Y'all can do some panels. Y'all can host some little cute breakfasts, like, hey, we'll pay for y'all to have croissant rolls and a venue for some, big sticky notes, and nothing ever comes of that but a cute report and a website. And we were like, no, because we were literally the niggas that set shit on fire. Like, you don't take people who are willing to say, okay, you're killing us, so we're going to simply shut down your highway and say, we're going to give you X amount of thousands of dollars a year to pay 6 of you to have a salary to simply capacity build. And you define what capacity building be, or you put together a convening or a convergence. But we don't define what convening or convergence, because that's how these things look, right? It's like 50 grand a 10-day Deshaun, and we're gonna fight fat phobia. It could literally be a series of Deshaun reading every chapter from their book for the next 4 weeks. We send it over to the person and we get paid, and we've done nothing to stop very real anti-fat violence in the community, right? And I said all that to say, at that time, as young people, at the time I was the oldest, like 24 and under, we looked at each other and said, we are not going to be these people's puppets. And we starved. I couldn't find jobs. A lot of us were homeless. A lot of us got evicted. A lot of us went to jail. Our lives were upended because of our refusal to go in that way. We could have ate really well, and hell, if we wanted to, we could have been sitting in Keisha Bottoms's, cabinet or on her advisory board, or been some executive director of your favorite nonprofit in Atlanta. We could have done a creative something firm and really just tout it, because we know the politics well enough to make it cute and say we're aligned that way, but literally been living well while everybody else starved. And to have that clarity of sight that young came from us being rooted and grounded, not with the Negro liberal establishment aligned civil rights activists that came before us. We weren't in community with John Lewis. We were in community with Sharice Brown and Marshall Rancifer, who were literally serving people on the streets, who were literally at the forefront of eviction because they are living in public housing facing eviction. And so it at community at all levels and community accountability at all levels works in a way to say, before we even cut the check, the proposal that there may be a check that you may qualify for if you act right is enough for us to say, nah, we're not moving in that way. And I'm like, if we can do that shit between the ages of 19 and 24 and we ain't never had real jobs before, the rest of these people who sit up there and lie and say they had no idea that shit was gonna go this way can actually kiss my ass, because I'm tired.
Period.
There's no excuse.
Well, this has been a powerful 30 I think we can kind of end it here. Deshaun, do you have anything else to say in response to all of this?
I think that you really wrapped that up beautifully. I love the example of ATL is Ready, because it really was a defining moment for all of us. It was 5 of us. And that moment, that choice, and of course life played its role too. At the time I was homeless and was navigating BS with Morehouse and stuff like that, and all of us were navigating so much, and that was a defining moment, because we absolutely could have done exactly what they wanted, and I wouldn't have been homeless no more. I wouldn't have been starving no more. I probably got my degree from Morehouse, right? But we didn't. And I'm grateful that we didn't, because it really defined our politics and defined our commitments to Black people. Mm-hmm. And I think ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what this comes down to, is your commitment to Black people, right? Your commitment to either sustaining the state or dissolving the state. Period. There's only 2 options. right?
Yeah.
That's the only binary I ascribe to. Either you are, either you are going to dissolve the state, destroy the state, tear that shit the fuck down, or you're committed to sustaining it. That's it. And I'm not convinced that Patrice and the like, Patrice and ilk, are not committed to sustaining the state. And Joy James would call that the captive maternal. And I think that they have proven time and time again that that's their commitment. And I hate that for them. I hate that for us, because it affects all Black people when this becomes the forefront of Black movement and Black movement work. But it also is what it is, because we will continue to do the work that we do, and that's what matters. Whether that work is organizing work or not, right? Whether that work is on the ground or not, we're in community with Black folks, and we're committed to Black folks in a very particular way, and destroying anti-Blackness, and that is the work that's required. So yeah, Patrice, I hope that she and all the rest of them who have capitalized off of Black death find a conscience. I know that they probably won't, but I hope
a better community,
and a much better community that will also hold that conscience, because it matters. And I wish that we didn't have to come to this type of public spectacle. And I wish that we could live in the world that a lot of Black folks are always like, why Black people always got to beef and blah, blah, blah. I wish that we could live in a world where we didn't have to beef, and when we did, we could handle it in a way that wasn't public spectacle, but we can't, because we have different commitments. And so, yeah, I do not wish them well. I wish them a conscience. And I hope that they one day understand why what's happening is violent.
Well, with that being said, we appreciate y'all for listening to this episode of In the Middle. I have enjoyed this conversation. I hope a lot of people can learn from this. Wow. So next time, y'all want to commentary on some things, make sure to tweet It's In the Middle, harass us, so these folks won't be so booked to be a part of this conversation, because I learned a lot in this conversation, like when we sitting down listening to y'all, because I've been wanting to know what y'all been thinking about all of these things, because it's not just Patrice, it's a whole bunch.
It's a whole
of others. We're just using Patrice as an example.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a whole class of them. Yeah. And they have class solidarity. And so do we.
Period. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye.